What's up, everybody? It's, 4 o'clock in the morning in the UK. E3, the conferences have finished. Spoiler alert, Sony won.
Yeah.
By quite a margin.
Yeah.
This is the latest episode of Games Up Podcast. Welcome to it. We hope you enjoy it. I've just dropped something on the ground. This is the last of our E3 2016 reaction podcasts. It is for Sony, as you've probably gathered.
Yeah.
I am joined here. I'm Cameron McCulloch-Keeble. I'm 1/3 of the host of the show. I'm joined by my other two members of this wonderful gaming threesome, Lewis Crawford.
Hello.
And Lawrence.
Hello.
Threesome Titley.
Yes, I don't have a last name. I am just...
No last name.
The law.
No
just
last name.
Lawrence.
Lawrence the law.
Yes.
So we just watched the Sony press conference. We just watched an hour and 15 minutes of pure fucking heaven.
Oh yeah.
We're going to go through it chronologically as we are wont to do. We will go from the very first announcement to the very last announcement, but I get the feeling we'll derail pretty quickly into all the good stuff.
Possibly.
Do you have notes?
I have some notes.
Excellent, good sir. Then I need
Although
you to guide me through
so
them,
memorable.
young Skywalker. Sorry.
That was.
My throat really hurts, so I thought I'd take advantage of it.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
Guide me.
they started strong, as you will,
Mhm.
as you will imagine. I hastily need to remind you. No.
Hairspray.
God of War straight out of the gate.
Yeah.
God of War again, but God of War better. God of War remastered.
So we'd heard...
Yes.
So it's very different from the previous God of War titles.
Yeah.
And this is maybe a reboot. We're not too sure.
It's not.
There's reasons to suggest that it's still the same.
I think it's fair to say it's a reboot based purely on the title.
Yeah.
I think so the title is God of War.
Yeah.
And I think if
Mhm.
it weren't a reboot, it would either be God of War 4 or God of War subtitle.
True. So in this, instead of being in the same era, we're now in the Norse. We're doing Norse gods.
Yeah.
We think it's Norse.
No, I'm pretty sure it's Norse. I
It
think
seems
everything.
fairly solidly
probably
Norse.
Yeah, it's.
When you're dealing with
and-
trolls, there's usually
And
a small amount of Norse.
we've had it rumored for about a month.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It was leaked about a month ago that God of War 4 was being developed and was being set in. I mean, basically a whole bunch of that stuff leaked.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fairly certain that it's a Norse setting.
Spartan Fists, though.
It seemed to suggest that it was
Yeah,
still
that was
Kratos.
interesting.
There are elements of the old setting of God of War left in it that would be highly
Yeah.
I wouldn't say anachronistic, but bad for the setting. But that's
Also,
not necessarily a thing.
I'm just going to say it's highly likely that I'm going to sneeze at some point very soon.
hmm
Good.
Sorry. Continue.
It's real.
So while that's not necessarily like a saying that it's a complete reboot or anything, because they could just ignore those elements.
Yeah.
They'll have to account for it, maybe.
Yeah. I think what was really interesting about the demo we watched is that the gameplay seems entirely different.
Yeah.
The gameplay of the first three God of Wars and God of War Ascension is kind of typically... It is a... I don't know how to describe it, but it's almost arena-based. Like, arena of bad guys move through to the next arena of bad guys move...
Yeah, okay, I think
I
that's
know,
fair.
like, there's,
I think
like,
that's fair.
Titan sections and platforming
Yeah.
sections, and it's it's, like, diverse.
Yeah,
But there is that kind of
I think that's fair.
bankable formula. And here it seemed to deviate from that entirely. It reminded me a lot of Tomb Raider.
Yeah, and it looked a lot less like, at least from what we saw, less tappy. You know, it wasn't the old God of War games were very
Button mash.
button
Yeah,
mashy.
that's very
And it
true.
didn't
That's very true.
quite look that way. And it looked like it's going to be more story driven from a you look at the old God of War games. The story's there, but it's kind of iffy. Whereas this looked like they're kind of going for a much more direct thing.
Yeah, it definitely didn't look button mashy. It almost, it almost looked
looked really
RPG
good.
like.
Yeah.
It looked
Mhm.
very good. It looked very good. What's interesting is the character has a son of some kind.
Yeah,
There was a
Of
father-son.
some variety.
A father-son relationship of some form. And if this is Kratos, I think actually one of the criticisms we've heard post-stream or online
Kratos-isms.
is that God damn it. One of the greatest criticisms that we've heard online since the reveal is Kratos isn't the kind of person to have a family. Except if this is the same Kratos who's from the Greek period, from Homer's Greek period, as you, I think, fairly estimated. And he's watched hundreds of eras of years of deaths and gods and deaths and gods. Maybe he is the kind. Well, but not just that, but like maybe he is the kind of character who's not just killing gods for rage anymore. He's actually trying to defend something and be a part of a world. And personally, God of War has never really interested me. They're very cool and cleverly made games, but they've always had that barrier of like very alpha male dude. Like they're a melee dude bro shooter. And this doesn't look like that. This is the same character. Like this is the equivalent of Marcus Phoenix doing a stealth shooter. From what it looks like. And that's super interesting because if that character works, the whole God of War franchise has a much different perspective on it post 4.
It is very interesting to see them kind of maybe go in a different direction with this. So I'm excited to see whatever we see from it. I mean, you know, because what we saw was a certain section of the game that it's interesting if the platforming is not going to be quite as big an element, or if we just haven't seen as much.
It was an absolutely solid demo.
Yeah, definitely.
And if it's telegraphing the future of that series, I think it's in very
telegraphing.
Yeah, definitely. I think.
You're on the ball. But if it is telegraphing, the future of that franchise, I think it's in very safe hands. And that's really exciting.
Yeah.
So what was their next announcement?
The next one was The Last Guardian.
The Last Guardian.
Flying dog birds.
Bird dog.
Bird dog.
Bird dog and bad dog.
Bird dog and bad dog.
Bad bird dog. So The Last Guardian got a release date and a new trailer.
Finally.
So it's
After
actually
all
happening.
This wait.
There is, what was it, 9-10 years?
Yeah.
It's actually happening.
Yeah, and it seems like they're kind of the fact that they're bringing it up again is very. In fact, it's got a release date, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was October 25th.
Yep.
Yeah, so
That's fairly impressive. Interesting that this is their big fall game.
yeah,
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that, like, it feels stupid now to say, that's not great competition. But, like, racked up against, Forza, Dead Rising, Gears, it does seem like maybe Xbox have a bit of a sort of 1-2 punch thing going on there.
yeah,
But
I agree.
I mean, that doesn't matter in 6 months, does it?
Yeah.
They've made that very clear.
Yeah,
So that was Last Guardian. Looks good. Looks the same. I'm glad we're not seeing much more of it. I hope that there's a lot of it left behind for what is the surprise.
see, that's the thing. I think is the reason why we're not seeing too much of it is I think the whole experience has to be like a.
It looks like a very narrative experience.
Yeah, like I think
absolutely.
anything we see of it will take away from what it actually is.
Yeah.
If we see it,
And I mean,
now.
with the history of what Shadow and Eco were, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So that was that.
The next one was primitive machine animals. Zero Dawn.
Horizon Zero Dawn.
Horizon Zero Dawn.
Now, I've heard some interesting things about this. The gameplay looked great.
Yeah.
It looked beautiful landscape. Looks like a really great idea for a game. I hope there's a bit more variety in the environments.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Because last year we saw big field, lots of robot dinosaurs. This year we saw big field, lots of robot dinosaurs. And the trailer has made it clear that there's like mountainous areas, there's maybe snowy areas,
Forested regions.
That's all good, but it seems like there's a lot of history to this game,
I think,
especially of like where this all came from, and I'd like to delve into that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's releasing soon,
February.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. I think the thing is that there's this element of it where it's saying like the old ones, the old civilization,
The ones that came before, that
So
kind of
yeah.
jazz.
we haven't actually seen anything that's directly pointing to that. In the game.
And indicates who
And
they
there's-
are.
There's the robots, of course, but then like in the different bits of footage we've seen, it kind of ends with like a here's like a destroyed. The actual, I remember the original trailer at E3.
Did it end with a destroyed city?
Yeah, it had like a destroyed city.
Yeah, didn't it? Yeah.
Not in the actual kind of footage, but is like a
sort of add-on trailer at the end.
Yeah, I think so. It was either a cinematic or it was a cover. I can't quite remember.
It was like a wrap-up.
I know it was on the cover.
It was like a wrap-up cinematic.
Yeah, I think so. So I mean, like, we haven't directly seen any of that at this point. So it's kind of...
There's a little worry that it may have been cut from...
I don't know. Maybe.
I mean,
either that or they are doing a Last Guardian thing, and that's very end-game content that they're not going to touch.
Yeah.
Which
that would be the optimistic way to think about
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think...
And I want to...
This is a very optimistic
I don't mind that, like, that's the thing. I don't mind that.
So that was Horizon Zero Dawn, and I feel like that's kind of gone over. Here's an interesting thing. Actually, we'll come to that at the end. I feel like that's gone over a lot of their sort of upcoming content.
Yeah.
The next was what was the next?
The next one was Detroit.
Detroit being human, or
being human, or we the people, or
do as you are told.
Yes.
Looked totally different to the reveal.
Yeah.
The original reveal was very David Cage. It was very deep, heavy cinema, deep, heavy narrative.
Yeah.
Very, I don't like to say it like this, but really quite pretentious in a good way, like in a very David Cage way.
Yeah.
Whereas this looked really cool. This looked very, like, LA Noire meets iRobot kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is, that's great by my mind.
The kind of theme of is set up in the first trailer of the kind of these androids that are hated by real people.
Yeah.
Real people who and that's still there, and that's good because at least it's not like they're going, that thing you saw before isn't the same in any way.
Yeah.
So but it seemed like it's kind of a mix up of, as you say, like LA Noire, and then kind of obviously the other games from Quantic Dream that we've already got.
A lot of the messaging this time round was this is my story.
Yeah.
Whereas the messaging last time round was this is my story. And we watched, whilst we were gathering our notes together and prepping the microphones and stuff, we watched half of IGN's post Show Beyond podcast, and they Alana Pierce, who's a very cool video game pundit, and our age, which is ridiculous, was saying, what if this game's episodic? What if this is one Isaac Asimov style story, short iRobot kind of detective story, and then the next one is something totally different? So like one's a detective game, one's maybe like on a military battlefield, one is a horror game. But like they're all different episodes that tell, like, almost like what's it called? Do not adjust your TV screens. You are entering the fucking Twilight Zone. Almost like a Twilight Zone take on, here is this unifying concept and a whole series of different takes on it.
Maybe.
Yeah. I feel like David Cage has been I feel like David Cage has been going towards that for a while, because Beyond Two Souls is one game that goes over so many different locations, and it gets really quite wanky in that way. And I think maybe that was almost like a tech demo or a test to show, hey, maybe this is a better way to do that.
Well, I think maybe it's also possible that we're getting some sort of, like in Heavy Rain, where you've got different characters, and we're kind of going to weave through all these stories as we're going along.
Oh, right, so there's like a unifying narrative.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Possibly.
I could see that happening.
Yeah.
And maybe like that's because they re-released Heavy Rain as well, didn't they? So they have been sort of paying attention to it again, clearly.
Yeah.
That's an interesting idea. So that was Detroit. Then did we have their big PSVR section?
Yes, it was the beginning of the VR, starting with the mightily atmospheric Resident Evil 7.
Yes.
Yeah, so they played quite a long trailer.
Yeah, so it was announced
very terrifying to begin with.
Yeah, oh god, it was all terrifying. Very.
It was all first person, very PT.
Very PT.
Yeah.
Incredibly PT. It was announced that, and this was well known, it was announced that the team who made The Kitchen were working on this horror game whenever it was, before it was announced as Resident Evil. And I've never played The Kitchen. I've had the opportunity to, but I've not played it because the idea of horror games normally scare the pants off me. Like, I'm an absolute pussy when it comes to horror games. And the idea of a horror game VR experience, it makes me, like, the thought of it makes me uncomfortable. And watching that trailer made me uncomfortable. The idea of playing that game in VR that's a step too far for me. But as the reboot Resident Evil needs and desperately needs, this could be it. I'm surprised that it's Resident Evil 7. I really thought it would just be Resident Evil whatever it is.
Yeah, that is true.
That being said, this is a moving about game, so I'm very interested to see how they're going to accomplish that in VR.
Yeah, I am as well.
Because you could see very much with all of Microsoft VR arrangements, it was pretty well confined to things that you would be sitting down or not moving at.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to say exactly what we're getting, because, I mean, as far as we know, this could be on rails, to be honest.
So I mean, that's like, a concern.
It could be, but it really didn't look it.
No, admittedly. And, like, it's interesting, because we have to talk about the fact that the VR that we're seeing is so...
Yeah, it looks amazing.
Much more than we've seen from the other VR, like...
Well, the graphics are certainly better.
I mean, admittedly,
in comparison, in comparison to Ubisoft's,
that's true.
Like the gameplay that we saw on Ubisoft's conference was photorealistic CG trailer compared to god awful graphics.
Yeah.
Whereas the gameplay we saw from Sony just now looked not photorealistic, but it looked high-end graphics.
Yeah.
It's a shame that they didn't have one of the things.
You've got to wonder whether they're achieving that by, like, the size of it. Like, Resident Evil, everything we saw took place in either a room at a time or a corridor at a time.
Yeah.
So you wonder whether maybe they're just processing that and a little more around it to achieve that. And then everything else we saw was, like, the stuff that we'll talk about in a minute were small experiences, small confined experiences. Like, the Star Wars one that came after it was an X-Wing thing, except it's probably an on-rails thing, or it's probably a case of all they're rendering is the X-Wing and the space it's in. They don't have to be rendering an entire Star Wars Battlefront game. So that makes more sense. So it's either that, like, Sony have managed somehow to make VR work, or that Ubisoft have really shot themselves on the foot.
Yeah, I don't know with that, because, I mean, the thing is that the VR that we've seen so far, we haven't really seen any evidence to show that it's not kind of very confined in, like, a very small set base, a very small area.
Yeah.
You know, because there's been games, but there's also a lot of experiences which we'll get onto.
Well, let's go on. Shall we go on to talk about them?
Yeah, okay.
So Resident Evil looked terrifying. Looks great for a series reboot. Then we had Star Wars X-Wing.
Yeah.
Which was the... Oh, you've paused me.
Before we had...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, was there something else?
Yeah, there was Farpoint.
Yeah, and it looked...
Yeah.
Which was interesting for the same reasons that Resident Evil 7 was interesting, in that it seemed to be a move about. And it seemed to be a reasonably free move about.
Yeah, it was like a space sim?
It was a
I can't really remember it.
Shooter in some kind of desolate planet.
Yes, Lewis has pulled up the trailer in front of us. I do remember this. It's a shame, because this announcement was bookended by such big announcements that it's kind of gone missing. But yeah, this looks it kind of reminds me of the big first-person shooter that came out at the beginning of the generation for PlayStation. You've got it, Lewis.
Resistance.
Resistance? Is that what it's called?
Oh, you mean on
PlayStation 4?
And I've got it.
It made me think of Lost Planet.
Yes, that's not the one I'm thinking of, but yes, that's a really good analog.
But not in snow, in sand instead.
Oh, Killzone.
Killzone Shadowfall. Yes. It made me think about Killzone Shadowfall. So yeah, that was that, and then we got Star Wars.
And then we got Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a largely cockpit
so that's
arrangement, which doesn't mean much moving.
Maybe, and it seemed to be a like a dogfighting kind of game in space, which is, we've had quite a few of them.
Yeah,
it looked good, and it looked.
Frankly, there wasn't a great deal on it. The whole presentation took about a minute.
Yeah, I think, as with a lot of the VR that we're seeing, while admittedly the quality on that looked really good.
It looked amazing. It does annoy me though. This was confirmed a year ago.
Yeah.
And Battlefield had not come out a year ago.
Yeah.
They confirmed this a year ago, and everybody was clamoring for space battles. If we find out that this was planned for the game and cut out to be this, I'm going to be mighty pissed.
Yeah, I see.
There weren't actually any of these VR devices on stage.
No, there weren't.
So this is obviously why they're completely different from any of the Ubisoft.
And they did. VRs. Every one of them came with a little thing. It's not on this video anymore, but it did come with a little thing that said this has been modified to look right when not displayed in VR. So obviously, because when you display it in VR, you curve the image around you, and putting that on a regular screen, you get nasty lines and screen tearing and stuff.
Yeah.
But what that actually means, we don't know.
True, but
does that mean that they can fuck with the graphics and say, well, that's how it'll look on a not VR thing? Because I guess that's doable.
Yeah, but I worry about whether it's too late to be presenting stuff that isn't the actual what we're getting.
Yeah, especially with months to go.
That's the thing. Like they're gonna get so much shit if they don't, if it doesn't actually look like what they presented here, or at least close to it, because we're so close now to actually when Morpheus.
Yeah, Morpheus
is actually meant to release that it's going to be quite interesting if it doesn't look like what it's meant to look like.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see the opening comparisons.
In fairness, we can't quite say anything about Resident Evil because in Resident Evil we haven't quite seen what the gameplay actually is.
And we haven't seen how much of that is we know what Star Wars Battlefront looks like.
Yeah.
We know what the next announcement, which was Batman, we know what an Arkham game looks like.
But we haven't.
Well, yeah, but we don't know what that could look like in terms of a game though. The only one we've actually seen.
I have a
feeling I get the feeling I might have an idea of what Batman is going to look like.
Okay.
We'll talk about that in a second. And also we'll talk about that in a second. But we know what those are going to look like. We don't know what Resident Evil is going to look like. Yeah. We can assume it looks a lot like PT.
Yeah,
but we don't know whether that's the case because that trailer looks a lot different.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So then Batman was announced. Mark Hamill did more Joker voiceover.
Yeah.
A new Arkham game or Arkham Experience or Arkham something is happening. It's being developed by Rocksteady, and I am shaking. So brief. I'm gonna limit myself to 3 minutes here. Major Arkham Knight spoilers. I'm really sorry. I know you haven't finished the game. Major Arkham Knight spoilers. Starting now. Do you remember the last hour of that game?
Yeah.
Playing as the Joker in first person, experiencing a world collapsing around you. I reckon it's going to be something like that.
Okay.
Wandering the halls of the newly created Arkham Asylum.
Okay.
I imagine you look into the cells, you see clips of what the things are doing, Scarecrow walks around behind you, the Joker is over your shoulders and stuff, giving you this commentary. Maybe you open the doors and go out into Gotham City. I imagine it's going to be a more sort of walking tour of something than an Arkham game, because that kind of combat, like the Arkham combat and the Arkham stealth. Well, the Arkham stealth might work, but the Arkham combat probably wouldn't.
No, and it is being sold as an experience, not a game.
But I can't believe when the fuck has Arkham ever gone first person before? And I didn't fucking think about it.
Yeah.
Bastards. Well played, Sony. Well played. So hold on.
Hey, you've done well.
I did a minute and a half there, so I feel like I could spoil the rest of it.
Okay.
The Arkham Knight is Jason Todd. Joker comes into the game. He's dead. Batman's identity gets revealed.
Why are you doing this?
Well, I said Arkham Knight spoilers. Like, if you're annoyed at this, it's your own fucking fault. I've got a minute and a half.
Okay.
We could just be silent, but I feel like that's ruining the podcast. Okay, so Arkham Knight VR, I think they set out this year, PSVR exclusive. All we got was a look around Batman. The cowl trailer. Like, it was a very pre-rendered CGI trailer with a voiceover, so we don't know what this is.
Yeah.
But it's an Arkham game, so we know what that means. We know what that franchise means.
It doesn't claim to be a game. I want to say this. It doesn't claim to be a game. It's an experience.
It's an experience.
So, I mean, we're looking at anything
from a new experience.
It may be a little bold to refer to it as a game.
Yeah, true.
I mean, we could be looking at... I mean, it depends what you say, because, I mean, you could argue that PT is a walking game at the end of the day.
Yeah, PT is a walking sim.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't necessarily... Like, you could call it an experience. It's not necessarily a game, and it's still got quite a lot of content in it, so... You know, so Arkham could be a lot... It could still be a lot, while still claiming to be experience.
So moving on, we got another Final Fantasy trailer.
Yeah.
Which is a bit... interesting, because now I'm not entirely sure where the marketing rights are. I'm pretty sure that with Xbox they seem to be on posters and things on outside E3. Maybe they're just all over the place. Maybe Square aren't going to one.
They've had an awfully long time to marshal them together.
Well, Square are doing pretty well at the moment, I think.
They are doing very well. And that came with an exclusive VR mode where you play as Prompto.
Yeah, I mean...
Are you a Final Fantasy person? Can you explain that to me?
No. The thing is that, right, you don't know how Final Fantasy works. This is the problem here. So they're not direct sequels. Every single game is a different thing.
Would you say each of them have a certain finality?
Nobody knows who Prompto is. This is the problem. This is the problem with this. Nobody knows who Prompto is.
Okay.
I can tell you who Moogle is.
All right, calm down.
And I've seen several.
There is reason to get excited later.
Yeah.
So then we went on to...
Call of Duty in space.
Yes, yeah, they did the big space demo.
Yeah,
that looked really cool.
It looked very pretty.
It looked pretty tight.
It looked really tight. The gameplay looked very tight. The exploration and the movement controls looked really good. I remarked to you, it reminded me a lot of Halo.
Yeah.
The whole the HUD layout, the way the guns fire, the movement and the lens flare and stuff looks very Halo-ish.
I have a deep worry, given that this is Call of Duty, that what we observed was a very tightly choreographed series of technologies used, discarded and never used again.
And that is the thing that they've done at E3 many times, where they show off the snowmobile level, and it's the snowmobile
even
level.
in their games.
Yeah, absolutely.
A single thing gets done, but never
Then,
revisited.
I mean, arguably, like, the Call of Duty single-player campaigns are kind of set piece, and if this
it works for them as well, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And if this set piece is bookended by two equally impressive set pieces that leads to the next one, maybe that's kind of the point of a Call of Duty campaign at this point.
I would say it's a reasonable criticism to have a game mechanic introduced. That it's bad to introduce a game mechanic if you plan to discard it as well, but this is more subjective.
I don't know whether there was much that they would discard from it, though. I mean, like, the grapple's definitely happening.
Mm-hmm. The zero gravity stuff I can see being discarded.
Dogfighting?
Yeah.
Yes, but...
The blowing a hole in the window, the jumping in between bits of wreckage.
Yeah, potentially.
I think it's very interesting
close as well.
Again. I can't imagine doing the battle in 3D without having it strictly. I can't imagine doing that 4 or 5 different ways or situations.
I guess, but the thing is that we're in a point now where we could do that potentially. So
we could certainly.
You know, I don't know.
I would trust any game that wasn't a Call of Duty to.
Well, I think the thing is that you're judging Call of Duty though on old Call of Duty. I mean, they've done a lot recently. Now they're not necessarily impressing their old fan base, but they've kind of come a long way from where they were. So I mean,
I think it's interesting and telling that we've still yet to see multiplayer gameplay.
Yeah.
Or anything that's strictly identified as a multiplayer map.
It's true, but I mean, like, the thing is that their core fans are
the multiplayer players.
And their core fans are not the ones that are going to be as interested in this as they are.
Well, screw them.
Yeah, but I think that this is such a big departure from the typical just run and gun with all the space and spaceship combat. I want to see how that fits into a multiplayer thing, purely because I love the idea of spaceship combat. That's a really cool idea.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think that as somebody who doesn't care about Call of Duty, that seems really cool to me. But there's also people out there who do care about Call of Duty every year that want to know that gameplay fits in and feels natural. And that's a really valid complaint to make for something that's an annualized franchise that's typically actually quite a reliable annualized franchise. So does this departure make sense?
Yeah.
So then, fuck me. Then we get into the good stuff. This is not even the good stuff. So then they play Modern Warfare 2. They play all gillied up for a couple of minutes. We see some... Yeah. We see some...
Captain Price beard.
Yep. We see a little bit of gameplay, a little bit of CG. And then, sorry, we're skipping over this because holy shit. And then the room goes dark, everything goes dark, and the orchestra... Oh yeah, they had an orchestra. And the orchestra starts playing... And fuck me, Crash Bandicoot's back.
Yeah. So they are remastering.
Here's what's interesting though. Before we get into the holy shit, this is the best thing ever fanboy moment, Activision still own the rights. They've done nothing with it for years and years and years. And Sony said we worked with our partners at Activision. I think Activision have been incredibly smart here because they are pushing out a Crash Bandicoot figure in Skylanders in the same year that 3 of the biggest character platforming games ever get re-released. That is, if that works, Skylanders will get the biggest boost.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, actually. That's a very fair point.
So, Crash Bandicoot 1, 2, and 3 are getting remastered.
Yeah. Which, we the remasters we've got so far in this games climate have been kind of five years, kind of, that's the maximum we've kind of got in terms of remasters.
I mean, we've had like Shadow Complex, which was far more. We've had there have been like 10-year-old Gears was 10. Halo Master Chief, Halo 2 was 10. Halo 1 when they did it was 10.
See, that's fair, but I mean it's a lot less than what we're talking about.
No,
in
yeah,
terms
absolutely. Resident Evil, but that was a remake of a remake. That's all confusing. This is a very interesting, and I'm sorry to say it to anybody who really does like it. Crash Bandicoot doesn't translate well.
You reckon?
Yeah, if you go back and play those games, it doesn't play great because those games were invented before analog was even an industry standard. Like that was still that was back in the days when the PlayStation 1 controller was just a D-pad and 4 buttons.
That's true, but
so they're saying this is rebuilt for PlayStation 4, which means that they could update that control scheme.
True. I think
this is exciting.
I think
they may have to, undermine some of the very basic principles of control for Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah, that will be it. It's got to retain that feeling of the original 3 games, and I think
but I think it can be done.
Yeah, I agree.
But I've got to be honest with you. As far as Sony cares, it probably doesn't have to be that good. It's going to sell.
It literally just has to exist.
Nostalgia.
I mean, it will sell on nostalgia alone. Like whatever happens.
Would be really interesting to know who's developing this.
Yeah,
because obviously Crash Bandicoot 1, 2, and 3 originally were made by Naughty Dog, but there's no way they're touching a character platformer with a long fucking stick. So who is taking up the mantle of Crash? Is this an Activision developed game?
Yeah.
And if so, do they get to retain some of the rights and maybe make Crash 4 one day? Or is this, have Sony hired the IP and are licensing out to somebody?
Yeah. It's worth mentioning.
Have they maybe put one of their own first party studios on this?
It's worth mentioning that while this was brought up, it was just a sentence. There wasn't anything.
There was remastered graphics behind them.
Yes, there was.
Oh yeah, that stuff was
remastered. Put their back into that one.
There is no way that those water shaders look that good from a PlayStation 1.
I'm tempted to say it was Skylanders.
No. That was a water level from Crash 3.
And it had the shadow of.
Hold on. That's the 5th level of the game, which is the 5th level in the first stage before the boss stage. I'm literally shaking about this game right now.
It had the silhouette of.
Hey, there's like 3 levels that have that.
You're on a jet ski.
So I can give you that.
One of them's at sunset though, so doesn't count.
What were you saying?
Huh?
What were you saying?
Oh, I had the silhouette of indisputably Crash Bandicoot.
Oh no! I'm not saying it wasn't Crash Bandicoot. I'm saying that
there's Crash Bandicoot in the Skylanders context.
Yeah,
I know what you mean. They just came on and said this is happening and showed nothing more, but I do think they actually showed some fairly cool assets. Like, it was just basic assets, but the fact that they actually have basic Crash assets is amazing. Then we moved on. Oh my god! Then we moved on to Skylanders, which means Crash is getting a 3D figure, which I'm gonna go out and instantly buy. And then
such
what?
a fanboy.
Yes, I'm a yes. How many times have you called me a Microsoft fanboy in
here's
the
this
past
game
2
that
years?
I've
Fucking give me this one.
I've abandoned the Microsoft now. It's just fanboy.
Okay, you're a fan of things. I can take that.
It's appalling, showing enthusiasm for
Then
things.
we had the Mad Max music. I can't
Yes.
remember how it goes, but we had the Mad Max music, and fucking Hideo Kojima walked out on stage.
Yes.
And not only did he walk out on stage, he showed a CG trailer for his next game, which is impressive because he only formed a studio 6 months ago. He barely has an engine.
Yeah.
He barely has anyone working on it. And it seems like he has a fairly strong core idea and, like, big principal part of what that game is. Also, 2 points to me for the prediction show. Thank you very much. So, Hideo Kojima, it's called... What was it called?
Dead Stranding.
Yeah, Death Stranding.
Terrible title.
Yes.
Sorry.
Potentially. I mean, it depends. I mean, you have to consider that, like, anything's a terrible title until it's settled
I agree,
down.
yeah. Absolutely, I agree.
Even Silent Hill doesn't sound like a great title.
I mean, Metal Gear Solid, god-awful title, but it's well known. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a bad title, but I don't really care, because you could title this game Piece of Shit #1, and if it plays well, it'll play fantastically.
Yeah. A really sodding weird trailer.
Yeah,
it was really
very
sodding weird.
psychomantasy.
Yeah.
We can't... The three of us here can't settle on whether we feel like it's got more of a Silent Hills vibe or more of a Metal Gear Solid vibe. It's definitely not got a strict Metal Gear Solid vibe. And Hideo Kojima, well, not like in the traditional... It looks more like the hospital scene than the rest of the game.
I would say it seems to retain certain elements of the environmentalism of a Metal Gear game.
That's true. Okay. But I think Hideo Kojima has confirmed that his first game is going to be an action game. Now, here's where I put my conspiracy hat on. Let's pop it on here. Is it entirely possible that Hideo Kojima is developing 2 games with 2 teams?
I think so.
The first one is Sony, and it's a Silent Hills thing with Norman Reedus. The second is a...
This is what I think, because I think that's entirely likely that this is with Sony. While
Silent Hills with Sony.
Yeah, while it is a Hideo Kojima production, I think this is something else, because, I mean, I find it very hard to wonder how he's going to translate that into an action game with Max and...
and especially with the character from, like, the whole...
The Silent Hills.
The whole thing is that the character logo is a character called Ludens. He walks around in, like, a suit of armor, but it's kind of mechy, and that looks nothing like whatever fits into that game. Now, we've seen all of 10 seconds of that game, and it's probably not even fairly representative of what that game will be. But that feels very disjointed in tone.
Yeah, I would wonder how they would turn into a game with this mech character in it. Very much so. I think whatever we're getting, though, is something that's exciting, because I mean, it's something new.
It looked very interesting. And I'm not... So... I'll try and court controversy a little bit here. I don't like everything that Hideo Kojima puts out, and I don't necessarily like his style of game making, but I will say that he knows how to grab images and make them stay with you.
Yeah.
He knew how to do it with the Metal Gear 5 trailers. He knew how to do it especially with Silent Hills, and he knows how to do it here.
Yeah.
And I think of all the gameplay trailers we saw, of all the things that we saw that we thought, I want to know more about that, the thing I want to know more about is this.
Yeah.
Because there's so much interesting content that has no grounding in context whatsoever, and he's very good at taking that and making it realised into a game. So of all the things that showed promise, this was possibly the highest of it. So, holy shit. So then we go from... Then Hideo Kojima walks off stage, and they fucking announce that they've got Insomniac making a PlayStation 4 exclusive Spider-Man game.
Yeah.
And the trailer looked awesome. I don't even know what to say. Like, I literally don't know what to say. Spider-Man games are always... They always go so underappreciated.
Yeah.
Like, everybody loves Spider-Man 2 because it is an amazing, amazing game. But the two games that Beanox made for the Amazing Spider-Man movies are actually surprisingly good. Like, if Spider-Man 2 hadn't come out all those years ago, it would have been a really good Spider-Man game. And they always go underappreciated because Spider-Man 2 was so good. Of all the people I trust to get close to Spider-Man 2 levels of quality, Insomniac are one of those people.
Yeah, definitely.
And they have had a busy year.
Yeah.
They've had and I now see why Sunset Overdrive 2 is probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because they're too busy raking in the money from PlayStation 4 and Spider-Man.
Yeah, and the exclusivity here is an interesting thing.
Yeah, I mean it kind of makes sense because Sony own the rights to Spider-Man.
Yeah.
So I guess there'd be no reason for them to put it on Microsoft. I really hoped when I heard that this rumor got leaked about a few weeks ago. I really hoped that it would be a third-party thing, just because I really hope that. I mean, first-party exclusivity, but exclusivity sucks across the board. It always sucks, and it makes sense for console providers. But there's always that little shard of hope within you that they have that kind of heart within them to say, this is something that lots of people want to play.
Yeah,
and obviously that's not how business works.
No,
but I really hope that this wasn't going to be the case.
Yeah. I have to say on that vein is like, I own a PS4. I wouldn't own a PS4 if it wasn't for exclusives.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so it works.
You wouldn't be drawn by the merits of the PS4
but
of itself.
I'm a PC gamer that spent like grand on my computer. There's no way I would choose.
No, but then in this context, if you had the choice to play something on PlayStation 4 or PC, you'd choose PC.
Yeah.
And that's
completely.
The thing. Like, I personally think that exclusives... So, we'll get into this, I'm sure, in another time. But I think exclusives suck because it doesn't make sense to own more than one console. If you're going to put your time into gaming and you're going to build up a profile, an achievement history, a backlog of games, a backlog of spare money, a backlog of, like... history on that profile, I don't think it makes sense to flick between 2 or 3 or 4 consoles or platforms.
Maybe
like exclusives like the exclusives that we get are good for competition. They're really good for the industry and they're really good for pushing and competing against each other. But like, if I could play Bloodborne on Xbox One, I would.
Yeah.
And if that means that you could play Gears of War on PlayStation 4, that'd be really worth it to me.
Yeah.
Like a world where exclusivity doesn't exist is never going to happen. And maybe it shouldn't, because that's a world where the gaming space is maybe a little more bland. But this is a really double-edged sword where holy shit do I want this game. Holy shit do I want Insomniac, an incredible developer, but behind Spider-Man, an incredible IP that we've all loved for years. And I don't know about you, but it's a really important part of my childhood. Like, fuck me, I want this game. But at the same time, I so badly don't want it to be exclusive. Yeah. And I don't want it to be created if it is exclusive, but I do want it to be created. Like, I do. I definitely want it. I definitely want it to be created, and I definitely want it to be playable and exist in any form. But on the other edge of that sword, on the other edge of the double-edged sword, like, in order for it to be created by anyone, it's got to be created on one platform in this situation. Yeah, just like, fuck yeah, I can't wait for Halo 6, but I'd love for it to be on everyone. Like, I'd love for everyone to have access just to Halo 6.
It's interesting on that front that Microsoft seems to be giving up exclusivity, at least in terms of PC.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting move by them.
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely.
How much of a walloping did they get over the whole Tomb Raider?
They did. They did get a huge walloping for it.
Yes, yeah, but like the thing is, for me, is that admittedly, while it'll only apply to future games, as far as I'm aware, and maybe not all of them, it seems like less of a reason for someone like me to buy a console.
Yeah,
and I'll be honest
right.
with you,
Absolutely.
I'm willing to be the person who buys consoles for exclusives. Only.
That's fair enough.
Like I maybe not at this time, but I could see myself in a few years getting an Xbox One.
Okay.
Or S, I guess, probably. For the exclusives. At the moment I wouldn't, but if the exclusives become, I mean, we've got some exclusives on the way that are exciting.
Yeah, I mean, like, this is a much deeper discussion about the role of consoles and platforms in the industry.
You'll know my opinion on this, on exclusivity.
And we'll shift to it in another episode of the show, I'm sure. Do Sony deserve a bollocking over its exclusivity, like Microsoft got for... They're never going to get it, because Sony are the popular ones.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately...
They ought to be treated even-handedly over this.
Well, but then have they funded it and created it and they own the rights? Like, it's a dangerous...
Well, I mean, you're looking at... The thing is that while there's lots of exclusivity, the reason that they got a lot of trouble for Tomb Raider was the new exclusivity. You know, this being a game that wasn't, and now it is.
Well, but it wasn't ever a game that was... Like, it was announced on Xbox's stage as exclusive to Xbox.
Yeah, but what I mean is that... what I mean is...
I know that what you mean is, like, it was a franchise that had installment, but that's the same with Spider-Man.
Once upon a time, it was not exclusive.
Like, it was only 3 years ago that we had Spider-Man 2 and it was on all the platforms.
See, I would say yes, but this isn't... The thing is with the Spider-Man is it's why is Spider-Man, like, the most rebooted superhero thing, by the way?
Because...
On a side note. Because I mean, like, this...
You're going to make me sound like such an elitist, but because people are idiots and don't know what makes a good Spider-Man movie and don't know what they go to movies for, but we'll do that on another show.
Well...
It's just Spider-Man's had more reboots than anything else ever.
Maybe rebooting Spider-Man
it's probably because, in terms of Marvel, it's one of the Marvel properties that have the biggest mindshare. And so... When done right, it's one of the most undeniably profitable superheroes, and it's hitting that magic point that studios haven't been able to get right yet.
Okay, so anyway, so I guess it depends. I mean, the thing is that we could look at this Spider-Man as being a new IP, not a new IP, but a new set of games. If the next Spider-Man was if this one was not exclusive and the next one was exclusive, I'm sure there would be somebody getting a bollocking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they make a sequel to this one.
But no, see,
the Batman thing's something, though, admittedly.
No, I'd say that the game's history of Spider-Man is sufficiently great that it can't just be completely swept entirely under the rug. I'd say that
It depends.
And I would agree with the Batman thing being... I know that there's no Xbox VR right now, and I would probably put money on it coming out. I'd probably put money on them making a VR Game of the Year edition that comes out on the Xbox Scorpio next year. But
when there is the hardware.
The hardware, yeah, I agree. But not being even on PC.
Yeah,
and I guess maybe that's Rocksteady.
But maybe
wanting to develop for the PC
potentially. But I think if we take the VR that we've seen that PlayStation VR is meant to be able to.
The level that it can reach.
Maybe it's more a thing of this is the only thing that we can do it on.
Maybe, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, admittedly,
but then equally on the other side, we know that Oculus and Vive are a much bigger, a much better and more fundamentally strong piece of hardware. So maybe it's a case of we develop this for PSVR because we don't want to push that limitation.
But it depends. Maybe this is the only place where maybe Sony's got the only one that's got enough funding to be able to go.
Maybe
just work on this.
See, this is what's. I told you that VR would be in a healthier state coming out of this.
Yeah,
I think what's interesting about it is that before this, we would have never had discussions like this.
Yeah.
We would have never had IP discussions about VR. If this year is anything to go by, VR may actually be thing that people said it would be.
Even for me, the person that's not with VR at all, I think. Maybe it's just, but as I say, maybe it's just because Sony's been able to go and take a massive studio and go just work on this.
Yeah,
you know, whereas we've got most of the other VR stuff we've seen is like half a studio working. Well, not even that. It's a small studio working, maybe a small section of Ubisoft doing a small game.
So, I'm the biggest. I don't mean to aggrandize myself or anything, but I would say I'm the biggest VR critic in this room for the stupidest reasons.
Okay.
My reasons are purely ridiculous. I don't like the idea of wearing something on my head that cuts me off from the real world.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like the idea of wearing a screen that has this escapist reality.
Okay.
Where you there's this kind of stupid dystopian image of you taking off the VR headset that shows your lovely house into a box in the corner, and I am incredibly tempted to buy VR now.
Really?
Yeah, these past few hours and these past few days have really shown me that actually there is really cool stuff that can be done with it.
Yeah.
I really want to get my hands on it. Holy shit, if Batman is at EGX, you will have to pull me away from it.
I want to see more before I kind of make that kind of judgment.
I agree, but I want to buy it.
Yeah.
It's too early. Don't be an early adopter. Who gets shafted? The early adopter.
I'd let Batman shaft me though. So then we skipped over this. We'll go to this. So after the Spider-Man game, we got gameplay of a game that was revealed earlier. We actually kind of missed it. Sorry. It's called Days Gone. Now, this game was leaked a couple of weeks ago as a game called Dead Don't Ride.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's a biker game. It's a game about bikers that fight zombies and are mercenaries, they announced in the trailer, but I don't know exactly what that means.
Yeah.
The gameplay lasted for about 2 minutes, 3 minutes. It was quite reminiscent, I think, of The Last of Us.
Yeah.
The Last of Us, it was slow, it was staggering, but there was the horror aspect to it. It was beautifully lit, it was kind of sundowny.
Yeah.
Terrifying amounts of zombies.
Yeah, in terms of like atmosphere, then there is very much.
It's not looking like a Last of Us game, but it does look like Sony's pushing towards that Last of Us atmosphere more and more. Like, I definitely got that vibe from God of War 4, Detroit, and this.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Which could be a really good thing if they all manage it, but it also could be a really bad thing if it becomes known as the Last of Us box.
Yeah. Now, I think what we saw was a very specific section.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know what it translates to in the actual game. We had this character defending himself against a ridiculously large horde.
Like Left 4 Dead levels, if not more. World War Z kind of.
Yeah.
Or World War Z.
Yeah, so
that played, and then the one of the guys came on stage, said, "Thanks very much, PlayStation's really good, it's all because of the gamers." Then we got a sizzle reel, and the conference ended. Still, no one last thing.
Yeah,
true.
And we didn't need a one last thing here, but really, have people forgotten how to do the and one last thing moment?
They could have just reorganized a little bit.
Stop changing things.
The same thing happened. They never quite get it right. I mean, even last year, Sony's conference was like, here's these 3 massive things, and then the rest of the show's okay.
But is that everything? Have we wrapped up all the announcements?
That's pretty well everything, yeah.
So we'll do a post show a little bit further after E3. We'll let it compress and give ourselves a bit more of a sort of step back from it, look at what E3 was. But overall, that was the best game conference I've ever watched.
They won E3.
Last year, you would not stop moving. You were crazy excited about it. This was my 2015 for that. Like, they couldn't have nailed all the things I want from gaming more than that.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I say last year was better, but only because of the one thing that I wanted. So
because it nailed the titles and the IPs that you care about,
exactly.
and this is the same flip side of that coin for me.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We got lots of. In fact, if anything, Sony's the only one that actually kind of revealed stuff.
Yeah, revealed stuff on a frequent basis.
Yeah,
absolutely.
This year's been a lot
good job.
Stuff that we know, stuff that's already leaked, stuff that's kind of everyone knows is leaked as well. Not even slight hints. The kind of this is the only one where we've kind of had some surprises.
And I am of Sony more than the others a lot more deeply suspicious that their VR was a lot less substantial.
Yeah,
that we have.
Yeah. That's fair, but as I say,
I mean,
it's so
let's
close.
Look at it this way: if what do you call it? If Eagles flight.
If Eagles fly,
Eagles flight.
Where eagles dare.
Where eagles may safely graze.
Where eagles of death metal. Sorry.
I can do if Eagles flight can completely and fantastically mess up, because it's forced to expose itself on the stage.
Yeah, then these
true
as well.
I think that's completely fair.
Sony hasn't given itself an opportunity to completely expose itself.
But I do.
With only months to go, though, that exposure is going to be a sudden drop if it happens.
Yeah, like if I think they're clever enough that they wouldn't do this. Like, the thing is that, I mean, maybe, but like it's such a massive, like, if at such proximity, like when you've got something that's like releases a year later. Or like January time after E3, then you've got enough time that you can make these graphical decreases,
Yeah,
and people will notice, but it's not the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm.
But with this proximity that we've got here,
I mean, like the Batman one's out in October.
Yeah,
Battlefront is, I think, out in October. Resident Evil, they said February next year or early next year. Like these are all within a 12-month cycle if they're not delayed.
I am deeply suspicious that Batman will be out in October.
Really? Interesting.
Because I think that if they had more actual gameplay to show us, if they had actual
so maybe it's a trade-off of out soon, but there's not much to it.
That's true, but I mean the thing is
they'll just.
Or there is something to it and it's delayed.
Do the stupid thing and release, announce it for a date that it'll never make.
Yeah, maybe. And they do have a history of doing that.
Potentially.
With Batman Arkham Knight that had a year and a couple of months delay. Yeah, they do have a history.
You need a bit more, but...
Well, I mean all in one.
Yeah. I think... I don't know with this, because I mean Rocksteady's had some time.
Have they proven themselves a Rocksteady?
Have they though? Well, like they released the last DLC pack in January. That's not that much time to take on a new technology like VR.
Potentially,
unless
but I
they've been working for VR. Oh,
yeah, but the thing is, it's possible that they have already been working on it. But then again, it's possible that this is not massive. It could be a 1 or 2 hour thing. It doesn't have to be a full.
Yeah,
you know.
So, gentlemen, it is now.
I want to quickly add something.
Okay.
I want to quickly add something.
I want to quickly add something as well.
Okay. So the scissor wheel you mentioned, they were also making clear that the VR is going to launch with 50 games.
Okay. That's a healthy lineup.
Yeah. It was something that was kind of in there as well, which is interesting. Because, it's a very healthy lineup. I mean, to be honest, it's a healthier lineup than either of the consoles had.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or potentially still have.
Yeah. It's a healthier lineup than Wii U's going to die with.
Yeah.
The thing I want to add is no Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting because that game was supposed to come out this year.
Yeah.
And is apparently still supposed to come out this year.
Got a history of being delayed.
And it's a big it was supposed to be a big PSVR launch title. Yeah. And if this was their big PSVR push, you think maybe you want to double down on that.
Next year. I think it's...
I would agree with you. Either that or it's like launch window and it's a few months out.
Because I remember that 5... Is that was the one that was
that had some pretty big delays.
Yeah.
We also know Take-Two major presence at any of these. Mafia 3 was there for a bit, but no, not on PlayStation. Like it was present at E3. But
we were very expectant of it because Take-Two said, the CEO said they're going to be at E3 massively.
Yeah, and they aren't
as of yet. In terms of reveals, because I mean, ultimately, when you're bringing, when you're doing E3, you're going to either have a reveal or like a gameplay thing.
Or like announcements or blowouts. Yeah.
And so, like, the Mafia 3 trailer released a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
Not too long ago.
And the gameplay, we know what Mafia gameplay looks like, even if this is new. Like, this isn't the thing that you make a song and dance about.
Yeah,
so it's entirely possible that the doors open tomorrow and there is something on the show floor that we don't know about.
I think it's just going to be, you can play Mafia 3.
I don't know, man. They have had as many playable games this year as they've had many other years, and Strauss Zelnick, the guy who runs to Take-Two, has never made an E3 thing before.
True.
Like when they had Borderlands 2 be a giant fucking push on E3, they didn't say we're going to be at E3 in a big way. There is something that's made him point it out.
Maybe. And actually, from what I'm aware, he actually said that in response to being asked about Red Dead.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he's basically like someone asked him about Red Dead or Borderlands, I believe, and his response was, "We're going to be at E3 in a major way."
Oh fuck! I mean, the BioShock collection is all but leaked at this point.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yeah.
There's so much that I feel like we have to ask, where is it this year? And I feel like the only conference you can't really point to other than Gran Turismo and say that is Sony.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
So, gentlemen, closing thoughts.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly swept the board on this one.
Yep, absolutely. It's 5 o'clock in the morning in the UK, and who knows what we'll think in however many hours' time when we do our post show. But the the time of death of E3 is 4:55 because Sony absolutely just murdered it.
Oh yeah. So we'll get more from the next few days.
Yep, we will.
I don't know whether we're going to get anything. I mean, you seem pretty confident we're going to get something from Take-Two.
Yeah.
Okay. So
I mean, I'm the only one of us who's got any points for the prediction, so maybe I am the one to trust.
That is true. So we'll get details and stuff over the next few days. Whether we're going to get anything major, maybe, but I can't wait to see.
That, ladies and gentlemen, wraps up our conference reactions with Sony, who, no doubt about it, won E3. Thank you very much for joining us. If you did, remember, if you listen back to this and want even more of our fine voices getting all excited about games, there's an entire playlist of this year's E3 content that we have put together for you. Just have a click about, you'll find it. If you like this, please consider liking the show so we know that you enjoyed it and we can get out in front of more people. Please consider subscribing to the show so you don't miss anything we put out in the future. Come to our Facebook page, our Twitter page, whatever, all that jazz. Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Cameron.
Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you.
Happy E3 to the both of you. I cannot wait for 2017. This is always some of the best days of the year.
Yeah.
And happy E3 to you wonderful people at home. And until next time, and until next year, the game's up.